Welcome back. Tonight, we drift through the sleepy streets of ancient Mesopotamia. So wherever you are, however your day has been, you have nothing to do now but rest. There are no twists tonight, nothing to follow, nothing you need to remember in the morning. A city of mud-brick walls and warm dust, growing still beneath the fading desert light. We'll drift slowly, in no hurry to be anywhere at all. If these journeys help you rest, you're welcome to follow along, but only if you'd like to. And if you're listening now, leave the name of your city and the time where you are. Wherever you're listening from, you're in good company tonight. So let yourself settle. Let your shoulders soften, and let your eyes close whenever they're ready. Breathe in slowly, and let it go. There's no need to stay awake for any of this. Just let the streets of ancient Mesopotamia come to you. The story of this place begins with water. The land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers was not an easy place to live. The floods came without warning. They were violent and unpredictable. Early farmers could not survive on their own. The harsh landscape forced them to work together. They had to dig deep trenches by hand. They built complex networks to guide the muddy water. This shared struggle created something entirely new. People had to plan and share resources. They had to agree on rules for the water. These simple agreements grew into larger systems. Slowly, small farming camps turned into organized towns. The need to survive the wild rivers gave birth to the first true civilization. Sumer did not rise because the land was gentle. It rose because the land was so difficult. You can still see the faint lines of those ancient canals today. They are quiet scars in the dry earth. Down in the far south, the city of Eridu was once a busy place. It sat right on the edge of the Persian Gulf. Reed boats docked at its mud-brick piers. Sailors brought goods from distant shores. The air smelled of salt and wet clay. But the rivers were always carrying something else. They brought endless streams of fine silt from the northern mountains. Year after year, this dirt settled at the mouth of the rivers. The land slowly crept outward into the sea. Over thousands of years, the shoreline moved. It pushed further and further away from the city docks. Today, the Gulf is over 100 miles away. The bustling harbor is gone. The ruins of the ancient port now sit stranded in a vast, dry desert. The water simply left the city behind. It is a quiet reminder of how the earth slowly rewrites its own maps. Further inland, the people of Uruk faced a different kind of problem. The southern plains were completely flat. There were no stone quarries to mine. There were no thick forests for timber. The early builders had nothing but the earth beneath their feet. So, they learned to use the mud. They mixed wet clay with chopped reeds. They packed the mixture into wooden molds. Then, they left the blocks out to bake in the harsh sun. This simple invention changed everything. It allowed them to build on a massive scale. They stacked millions of these sun-dried bricks to create towering temple platforms. These structures rose high above the flat horizon. They were the first monumental buildings in human history. The architects turned the very ground they walked on into towering walls. The city grew upward, shaped entirely by the sun and the soil. It was a triumph of pure necessity. That same city grew into the world's first true metropolis. It did not happen by accident. The location was a perfect geographic puzzle piece. It sat exactly where the deep southern marshlands ended. Just north of the city, the dry river trade routes began. This made it a natural gathering place. Hunters and fishers from the wet reeds met merchants from the dusty plains. Goods had to pass through these gates to move north or south. The streets filled with different languages and strange new goods. Wealth pooled in the city like water in a basin. The population swelled as people came to trade and stayed to live. It became a sprawling hub of human activity. The mud-brick walls stretched out to hold thousands of homes. Geography had chosen this exact spot for greatness. The landscape itself funneled the ancient world right to its doorstep. Inside the busy Iana district, temple workers faced a new challenge. The city was growing too fast. The storehouses were overflowing with massive grain surpluses. Huge herds of sheep grazed outside the walls. No single person could remember who owned what. They needed a way to keep track of the wealth. Writing was not invented to record grand poetry. It was not made to tell the history of kings. It was born purely as a simple accounting tool. Administrators took damp clay and a sharp wooden stylus. They pressed small marks into the soft surface. These early symbols just counted sheep and baskets of barley. It was a quiet, practical solution to a daily problem. But those little wedge shapes changed the course of human thought. The clay tablets dried and became permanent records. A simple need to count grain gave us the power to record time itself. Further north, the landscape was divided into dozens of warring city-states. Each town had its own rules and its own rulers. Sargon of Akkad changed that fractured world. He managed to unify the region into the first true empire. But he did not just use weapons to hold it together. He used the quiet power of standardization. He created a single system of weights and measures. He introduced one calendar for everyone to follow. Suddenly, a merchant could travel across borders with ease. A pound of grain meant the same thing in every market. Trade flowed smoothly from the Persian Gulf to the northern mountains. This simple shared system connected people more tightly than any army could. It made the vast empire feel like a single functioning machine. The daily rhythm of buying and selling became predictable. A shared sense of order settled over the ancient plains. That great empire eventually fell, but not to a foreign army. The collapse came from the sky. A massive shift in the global climate changed the weather patterns. We now call it the 4.2 kiloyear event. A severe, decades-long drought settled over the region. The northern plains relied entirely on rainfall to grow their crops. Without rain, the green fields quickly turned to dust. The rivers shrank, and the harvests failed year after year. People in cities like Tel Leilan could no longer feed themselves. Desperate families packed their belongings and fled south. They flooded into the southern cities, looking for food and water. The sudden wave of refugees overwhelmed the local systems. The central government simply could not cope with the strain. The streets emptied out, and sand drifted against the doorways. A shift in the wind was enough to erase an entire era of power. After the dust settled, the southern city of Ur rose to power. The Third Dynasty did not want to rely on military force. They had seen how quickly empires could shatter. Instead, they built a massive, peaceful machine of paperwork. They created a vast bureaucracy to manage the kingdom. Every single resource was carefully tracked and recorded. Scribes noted the birth of every calf and the weaving of every tunic. Thousands of clay tablets filled the quiet archive rooms. The state managed the farms, the workshops, and the trade routes. It was a deeply organized, almost quiet way to rule. The kings believed that perfect order would keep the chaos away. For a long time it worked beautifully. The region enjoyed a rare period of stability and calm. The power of the state lived in the careful, daily scratching of a stylus on wet clay. But even perfect records cannot control the natural world. The great capital was eventually abandoned, and war was not the cause. The earth itself simply shifted. For centuries, the Euphrates River had flowed right past the city walls. It filled the local canals and watered the fields. Then, the river began to physically change its course. The main channel slowly migrated eastward across the flat plains. Year by year, the water level in the city canals dropped. Eventually, the river moved too far away to reach. The lifeblood of the city simply dried up. The deep muddy trenches turned into cracked, empty ravines. Without water, the fields died, and the trade boats could not arrive. The people had no choice but to pack up and leave. The towering mud-brick walls were left to stand in silence. The river had simply decided to walk away in the night. A slower, quieter disaster was also unfolding across the southern plains. The brilliant irrigation networks had a hidden flaw. The river water carried tiny amounts of salt. When the hot sun evaporated the water in the fields, the salt stayed behind. Over many centuries, this salt built up in the soil. The earth slowly turned white and toxic. The crop yields began to drop, year after year. Wheat could no longer grow in the poisoned dirt. The farmers tried planting barley, but even that eventually failed. The southern lands could no longer feed a large population. The center of power had to move to survive. It shifted permanently north, toward a younger city called Babylon. The ancient southern heartland was slowly left behind. The very water that gave life to the first cities eventually made the ground too bitter to hold them. As the south faded, new faces arrived in the northern cities. Amorite nomads migrated in from the harsh western deserts. They were not city builders at first. They were shepherds, used to the open sky and moving flocks. But they slowly settled into the urban centers. They brought their sheep-herding traditions right through the city gates. The smell of wool and campfires mixed with the scent of urban markets. These newcomers blended their desert customs with the ancient local ways. They learned to write, and they learned to govern. Over time, these former nomads became the new kings. They founded the first Babylonian Empire. The city streets adapted to the rhythm of the herds. The culture grew richer, layered with the stories of the desert. A wandering people found a permanent home. They built a new world on the quiet foundations of the old one. One of those new kings was Hammurabi. He is famous for his laws, but he built his empire with water. He understood that rivers were the ultimate source of power. He used the Euphrates as a weapon against his rivals. When a city like Larsa refused to yield, he did not just send troops. He ordered his engineers to build massive earthen dams upstream. He would block the river and starve the rival city of water. The enemy fields would dry up, and panic would set in. Sometimes, he would wait until the water pooled high behind the dam. Then, he would break the earth, and release a sudden, devastating flood. The rushing water would smash against the enemy walls. It was a brutal, effective strategy. He controlled the landscape itself to force his neighbors to bow. The river became a tool of quiet, overwhelming force. Centuries later, a new group called the Kussites conquered the region. They ruled from their own capital at Dur-Kurigalzu for 400 years. Usually, a conquering force tries to erase the past. They tear down old monuments and ban old languages. But the Kassites did something entirely different. They fell in love with the ancient culture they had conquered. Instead of destroying the old Sumerian literature, they saved it. They hired scribes to carefully copy the fragile, crumbling clay tablets. They catalogued the ancient myths, the poems and the prayers. They organized the old knowledge into grand, permanent libraries. They quietly preserved a history that was not even their own. Because of their careful work, those ancient stories survived the centuries. A foreign people became the greatest protectors of the local memory. They kept the voices of the past alive in the quiet halls of their new temples. Far to the north, the city of Ashur faced a very different reality. The Assyrian homeland sat on flat, open plains. There were no natural borders to protect them. There were no high mountains or deep oceans to keep enemies away. They were completely exposed on all sides. Rival kingdoms and raiding tribes constantly threatened their borders. To survive this harsh geography, they had to change their society. They could not rely on farmers picking up weapons after the harvest. They needed protection every single day of the year. So they created the world's first professional standing army. Men were paid to train and fight as their only job. The armory courtyards were always busy, filled with bronze shields and sharp spears. The constant threat of danger forged a deeply militarized culture. The flat, open landscape forced them to become the most feared warriors in the ancient world. This military focus completely changed the physical shape of their cities. New technology arrived from the northern steppes. The introduction of the horse and the war chariot altered everything. These fast, heavy vehicles needed room to move. The old, narrow, winding streets of the early towns were useless now. A chariot could not turn a tight corner. So the architects had to redesign the urban landscape. They built massive, wide gates to let the horses pass. They laid out smooth, straight processional avenues through the center of town. A city like Nineveh was built for speed and display. The wide dirt roads allowed troops to deploy quickly. The architecture itself had to adapt to the size and speed of the horse. The quiet, cramped alleys were replaced by grand, open spaces. The tools of war dictated the very layout of the streets you would walk on. Another secret technology helped build their massive empire. For a long time, the Hittites closely guarded the knowledge of iron working. They kept the glowing forges hidden from the rest of the world. But eventually the secret leaked out into the wider region. Blacksmiths in cities like Nimrud learned to heat and hammer the dark metal. Iron was much stronger and cheaper than bronze. This changed the daily life of every person. farmers could now use heavy iron plows to cut deeper into the hard soil. The crop yields surged, feeding a growing population. At the same time, the armories produced stronger, sharper weapons. The glowing charcoal fires burned late into the night. The sound of hammers ringing on anvils became the heartbeat of the empire. A single hidden secret transformed both the quiet fields and the violent battlefields. Iron gave them the strength to conquer the world. The capital of this vast empire moved for a very personal reason. King Sennacherib decided to abandon the old royal center of Dur-Sharrukin. His father had built that grand city, but he died in battle while ruling from there. In the ancient world, a king falling in battle was a terrible omen. Sennacherib believed the old city was deeply cursed by the gods. He refused to stay in a place shadowed by such bad luck. So, he packed up the royal court and moved. He chose to build a massive new capital on the banks of the Tigris. He poured endless wealth into making it the greatest city on earth. Workers laid huge limestone foundations by the river. They built sprawling palaces and towering walls. A simple superstition changed the map of the empire. A son's fear of a curse gave birth to a legendary metropolis. That same king made a decision that shocked the ancient world. He marched south and completely destroyed the sacred city of Babylon. He tore down its temples and smashed its monuments. He even diverted water to wash away the ruins. This act was considered a horrific sacrilege. The southern city was deeply holy, even to its enemies. The destruction terrified the people of the empire. They believed the angry gods would punish them all for this crime. When the king died, his own successors scrambled to fix his mistake. They spent decades quietly and carefully rebuilding the ruined city. Workers laid fresh mud bricks over the charred, broken foundations. They restored the temples and offered endless prayers of apology. The new kings wanted to erase the memory of the violence. They rebuilt the sacred walls just to calm the fears of their own people. Eventually, the enemies of the north united to take their revenge. The Medes and the Babylonians formed an alliance and marched on the capital. They breached the massive walls and conquered the sprawling city. After the fires burned out, the great Assyrian center was simply abandoned. The survivors fled, and no one returned to rebuild. The elements slowly took over the empty streets. The winter rains washed over the towering mud-brick palaces. Year after year, the grand structures melted back into the earth. The sharp angles of the walls softened into gentle curves. Over centuries, the entire metropolis disappeared under a blanket of dirt and grass. It became a series of vast, quiet mounds on the northern plains. Shepherds grazed their flocks over the buried throne rooms. The most feared city in the world blended seamlessly back into the natural landscape, completely hidden from time. Down in the south, the rebuilt Holy City entered a golden age. King Nebuchadnezzar II wanted to create an ancient megacity. He took the captured wealth from across the Near East and poured it into the streets. He launched a massive, relentless campaign of public works. His engineers dug new canals to bring fresh water to every neighborhood. They built towering, multi-tiered ziggurats that touched the sky. The city walls were made so thick that chariots could race along the top. Millions of baked bricks were stamped with the king's name. The flat-roofed houses stretched out for miles in every direction. It became a sprawling, dense urban center, unlike anything seen before. The sheer scale of the construction was meant to overwhelm the senses. He turned a sacred religious site into a monument of absolute power. The skyline itself was a display of endless wealth. The end of that great empire came with surprising quiet. When the Persian king Cyrus the Great arrived, there was no massive siege. The city walls were famous for being completely impenetrable. A direct attack would have been a slaughter. So the Persian engineers looked at the river that flowed through the city. Under the cover of darkness, they dug trenches upstream. They quietly diverted the Euphrates away from its main channel. The water level inside the city slowly began to drop. Soon, the riverbed was just a shallow, muddy path. The Persian troops simply waded through the mud in the dark. They walked right under the massive, arched water gates. They slipped inside the walls while the city was sleeping. The conquest was remarkably peaceful and almost entirely bloodless. The greatest fortress in the world fell because someone simply moved the water out of the way. Under new rulers, the daily habits of the city began to change. For thousands of years, scribes had written cuneiform on damp clay. Those heavy tablets survived fires, floods, and the passage of time. But the new administrators preferred a different method. They started writing in Aramaic, using ink on rolled parchment. It was lighter, faster, and much easier to carry. Scribes sat at wooden desks in quiet stone rooms, writing on animal skins. It was a great leap forward for daily communication. But it created a massive blind spot for history. Parchment does not survive in the damp soil of the river valleys. When the buildings eventually collapsed, the clay tablets stayed safe in the dirt. But the parchment scrolls simply rotted away into nothing. Centuries of administrative records, letters, and stories vanished completely. A simple change in office supplies erased a huge piece of the past. The final end of the ancient megacity was not violent. It was just a matter of bad business. The Hellenistic kings who ruled the region decided they wanted a new capital. They built a fresh, modern city called Seleucia, further north on the Tigris. They constructed new brick harbors and wide market squares. Slowly, the merchants realized the money was moving north. The trade routes shifted to meet the new docks. The merchant ships stopped unloading their cargo at the old southern gates. Without trade, the old city had no way to survive. The markets emptied out, and the craftsmen packed up their tools. Families moved away to find work in the new capital. The grand avenues grew quiet, and the temples were left empty. The city simply faded away as the economy walked out the door. It died of old age and a changing map. While other places crumbled, the ancient city of Nippur managed to survive. It lasted much longer than most of its neighbors. It did not have a massive army or control major trade routes. Its power was entirely spiritual. It was the undisputed religious center of the entire region. It was the home of the chief god, Enlil. Kings from rival empires all wanted the blessing of the priests. So, they continuously sent money and gifts to fund the temples. Even when foreign rulers took over, they paid for repairs to legitimize their own rule. The weathered mud-brick shrines were constantly rebuilt and expanded. Newer courtyard houses grew up around the ancient, sacred walls. The city became a quiet, neutral zone in a violent world. It survived the rise and fall of empires, simply because everyone agreed it was holy. Faith kept the mudbrick standing when everything else fell. Today, the physical landscape of the region holds a quiet secret. If you look across the flat, grassy plains, you will see strange hills. These steep, flat-topped mounds rise dramatically from the empty earth. They are called tells, and they are not natural formations. They are the melted remains of thousands of years of human life. When a mudbrick building collapsed, the next generation simply leveled the dirt. They built their new homes right on top of the old ones. Over centuries, the street level slowly rose higher and higher. Entire cities grew upward on the crushed bones of their own past. When the rains came and the people finally left, the structures melted together. They formed these massive, artificial hills. Every tell is a buried city, waiting quietly in the sun. The ancient world is still there, resting just beneath the grass. The story of the city begins in the quiet dust of Eridu. Long before the great empires rose, people gathered on this flat plain. They built a tiny shrine from simple mud. It was just a single room. They dedicated it to Enki, the god of water. Over the centuries, the wind wore the mud away. But the people never left. They simply built again. They mixed fresh mud and shaped new bricks. They laid them directly over the old walls. They did this 18 separate times. With each new layer, the sacred site grew a little taller. The floor rose higher above the desert. The walls grew thicker and stronger. Slowly, over thousands of years, that humble room became a massive stepped tower. It was a ziggurat, born from quiet, stubborn devotion. You can almost feel the patience in the earth. The ground holds the memory of every single brick. Further north, the early builders of Uruk found new ways to shape the earth. They constructed massive temples with thick, round columns. Plain mud walls were no longer enough. The architects wanted color and texture. They baked thousands of small clay cones in hot fires. They painted the flat ends in deep reds, stark blacks, and bright whites. While the thick wall plaster was still wet, workers pressed the cones into the surface. They packed them tightly together. The colored ends formed intricate, repeating zigzags and bold triangles. It was a massive mosaic, made of earth and fire. The cones protected the soft mud from the harsh wind. They also caught the shifting sunlight. As the sun moved across the sky, the shadows danced along the geometric patterns. The heavy columns looked almost light and woven. It was a brilliant way to turn simple dirt into lasting art. As this settlement grew into a true metropolis, it needed protection. The legendary king Gilgamesh is said to have ordered a massive wall. It was a staggering feat of early engineering. The barrier stretched for 6 long miles around the urban center. It was built entirely from sun-baked earth. The builders did not just make a simple flat fence. They designed a complex defensive ring. They spaced 900 semicircular towers, evenly along the entire perimeter. These rounded bastions broke up the flat surface. They gave guards a clear view in every direction. The sheer scale of the project required thousands of hands. Workers dug the clay, shaped the blocks, and stacked them high. The finished wall stood as a mountain in the flat landscape. It told anyone approaching that this was a place of immense power. The shadow of that wall defined the shape of the ancient world. Down in the southern marshes, the landscape demanded a different kind of engineering. The people here lived among endless seas of tall green reeds. They bundled these tough stalks together to build long, curved boats. But woven reeds alone cannot keep the water out. The builders relied on a dark, sticky secret from the desert floor. Natural petroleum tar bubbled up from deep underground springs. This thick black substance is called bitumen. The marsh dwellers harvested the heavy tar and heated it over fires. They smeared thick, shiny coats of it over the woven hulls. The bitumen sealed every gap and hardened into a waterproof shell. These dark boats glided silently through the shallow waterways. They carried fish, grain and families across the wetlands. The smell of hot tar became a familiar comfort. It was the scent of safe travel. The earth itself provided the perfect glue for their floating lives. That same sticky black tar soon transformed monumental architecture. When the kings of Ur built their great ziggurat, they faced a massive problem. A mountain of pure mudbrick would easily wash away in heavy floods. So the engineers designed a brilliant two-part system. They built a solid, heavy core of cheap, sun-baked mud. Then, they wrapped it in a tough outer shell of expensive kiln-fired brick. To hold it all together, they used thick layers of natural bitumen. The hot tar acted as an incredibly strong waterproof mortar. Workers spread the dark sludge between every single red brick. The bitumen gripped the fired clay and sealed out the dampness. It formed dark, striking lines across the massive sloped walls. The tar flexed slightly in the heat, keeping the rigid bricks from cracking. This clever use of desert oil kept the great tower standing. It locked the sacred mountain firmly in place. Even with a waterproof shell, the massive structure held a hidden danger. The solid mud core trapped a huge amount of natural moisture. When heavy seasonal rains fell, water seeped deep into the earth. If that damp mud expanded, it could easily burst the fired brick shell. The whole tower might collapse under its own swelling weight. The architects solved this with a very simple trick. They engineered deep, square drainage shafts straight into the sides of the walls. These narrow tunnels are known as weeper holes. They allowed the dark, damp interior of the monument to breathe. After a heavy storm, the trapped water slowly evaporated. The moisture drifted out through the square vents into the dry desert air. The building essentially exhaled. You can still see these dark, quiet holes dotting the ancient facade today. They are small, patient lungs that kept the great brick mountain alive. Beneath the shadow of the great tower, the city held deeper secrets. The rulers built their final resting places far below the sunlit streets. Workers dug deep pits into the hard earth to create the royal tombs. They constructed grand, vaulted chambers entirely out of brick. These dark, quiet rooms were meant to last for eternity. To reach the burial vaults, you had to walk down a steep, sloping dirt ramp. The descent took you away from the noise of the living city. The air grew cooler and stiller with every downward step. The royal retinue followed their leaders down into this heavy silence. They brought gold, lapis lazuli and fine wooden harps into the dark. The brick walls absorbed the sounds of their final rituals. Then the ramps were filled with earth, sealing the vaults away. The ground closed over them, keeping the royal silence perfectly intact. The underground tombs required a very specific kind of structural magic. Long before the Romans perfected the true curved arch, these builders found a way. They needed to support the heavy earth above the burial chambers. They used a clever technique called corbelling. Workers stacked the bricks in straight horizontal layers. But with each new row, they pushed the bricks slightly inward. The walls slowly leaned toward each other as they rose. Finally, the two sides met perfectly in the middle. This created a tall, pointed roof that looked like a steep triangle. The heavy weight of the dirt pressed down, locking the stepped bricks tightly together. It was a brilliant, delicate balancing act in the dark. The rough edges of the bricks formed a textured, stepped ceiling. These quiet, narrow tunnels held back the crushing weight of the earth. They kept the underground spaces safe, dry and perfectly still. Above ground, the daily life of the city was just as carefully designed. The traditional houses were built to block out the harsh, glaring world. If you walked down a residential street, you saw only blank, windowless walls. The thick mudbrick facades offered no clues about the lives inside. The entire home was oriented inward, away from the dusty public alleys. Every room opened directly into a central open-air courtyard. This private space was the true heart of the house. During the day, the high walls cast deep, cooling shadows across the floor. At night, the open roof trapped the crisp, cool desert air. The heavy mud walls absorbed this chill, and held it through the hot morning. Families cooked, talked and slept in these quiet, shaded centers. The design turned every single home into a private, peaceful fortress. The noisy city simply faded away at the front door. This focus on clean, comfortable living extended beneath the private courtyards. In the city of Lunar, engineers designed a surprisingly modern convenience. They built an advanced underground sewer system to handle daily waste. Workers dug deep trenches through the narrow dirt streets. They laid down perfectly cylindrical pipes, made of hard-baked clay. These pipes connected directly to the private homes above. Wastewater drained straight from the quiet courtyards down into the hidden network. The baked brick resisted the constant flow of water and waste. It kept the streets above, dry, clean, and free of foul odors. This invisible infrastructure required careful planning and precise slopes. The water had to flow smoothly away from the living spaces. It is a quiet reminder that ancient people wanted the exact same comforts we do. They wanted a clean home, a fresh breeze and a neat courtyard. The earth simply hid their clever plumbing. Managing water was the most important job in this dry landscape. In the ancient settlement of Girsu, builders constructed a massive, mysterious structure. It spanned a narrow, vital canal that fed the surrounding fields. The structure was made entirely of tightly packed, baked red bricks. It was wide and stepped, looking almost like a sunken staircase. For a long time, its exact purpose was a quiet puzzle. It turns out this heavy brick monument did two jobs at once. It served as a sturdy bridge for people crossing the water, but it also functioned as a precise, adjustable dam. The builders left narrow sluice gates in the brickwork. They could open or close these gaps to control the river's flow. It was a beautiful piece of civic engineering. It tamed the wild water and connected the divided land. The heavy bricks stood firm against the endless rushing current. Before any major public building could rise, the ground itself had to be secured. The architects in Lagash did not just rely on heavy bricks and deep trenches. They believed a new temple needed a spiritual anchor to stay standing. Workers dug deep into the dark earth at the four corners of the site. Down in the dirt they carefully placed solid copper figurines. These small, heavy statues are known as foundation pegs. They were often shaped like gods or kings carrying baskets of earth. The metal figures were driven firmly into the soil. They were meant to pin the sacred building directly to the underworld. Once the pegs were set, the trenches were filled and hidden forever. The heavy copper slowly turned green in the damp, quiet dark. The people walking above never saw them, but they trusted that those small hidden kings were holding the walls steady. With the ground secured, rulers could build on a staggering scale. The city of Mari became famous for a palace of impossible size. It was a sprawling complex containing more than 300 separate rooms. The sheer scale of the building made it a wonder of the ancient world. Kings from rival nations traveled across the desert just to see it. They walked through vast open courtyards bathed in bright sunlight. The thick mud walls were not left plain and brown. They were covered in vibrant, sweeping frescoes. Artists painted bright green trees, fierce animals, and complex geometric borders. The colors brought the dry mud to vivid life. The palace was a maze of quiet corridors, busy kitchens, and shaded reception halls. It felt like a small, perfect city, hidden inside a larger one. You could wander for hours, and never see the same painted wall twice. Far to the north, the Assyrian kings wanted their homes to look different. They conquered distant lands and brought back new architectural ideas. In Nimrud, they began building grand entrances known as bit-hilani porticos. These were sweeping, open porches that changed the shape of the royal courts. The builders used massive, heavy wooden columns made from imported cedar. But they did not rest these thick logs on simple stone blocks. They carved colossal stone lions to serve as the basis. The heavy wooden pillars stood directly on the backs of the roaring beasts. It was a striking, exotic style, borrowed from their Western conquests. The design made the palace look worldly, dangerous, and incredibly rich. The scent of the cedar wood mixed with the cool dust of the stone. Anyone walking through those doors felt the heavy, quiet weight of the empire pressing down on them. When a later king decided to build a brand new capital, he started from scratch. He chose a flat, empty plain for the city of Dusharukin. But he refused to build his grand palace directly on the low ground. The seasonal floods were too risky, and a king should sit above his people. So his engineers did something incredibly bold. They raised an entire artificial mountain of solid mudbrick. Workers hauled millions of baskets of dirt to build a massive, flat terrace. They packed the earth tightly until it rose 50 feet into the air. It was a sheer, colossal cliff made entirely by human hands. The grand stone palace was then built on top of this towering platform. It lifted the royal courts safely above the damp, muddy plain. The king could look out over the flat world from his quiet, breezy height. The earth itself was forced to elevate him. The doorways of this elevated palace were protected by terrifying, beautiful guards. The king commissioned massive stone sculptures, known as lamasul. These were colossal bulls, with the calm, bearded heads of human men. They had great wings, carved into their heavy stone sides. The sculptors designed them with a brilliant, subtle optical illusion. They carved exactly 5 legs onto each massive beast. If you stood directly in front of the gate, the bull planted its 2 front feet firmly. It looked perfectly still, blocking your path. But as you walked past it through the doorway, the side view changed. The extra legs made the creature look like it was striding forward. The heavy stone seemed to move quietly alongside you. It was a clever trick of perspective and shadow. The silent guards watched you arrive. And then they walked you into the heart of the palace. The royal obsession with controlling nature reached its peak in Nineveh. King Sennacherib wanted lush, green life in a dry, dusty place. He built massive, terraced gardens directly into the walls of his palace. Many believe this was the true site of the legendary Hanging Gardens. But keeping those elevated trees alive required a constant, massive flow of water. The engineers constructed a staggering limestone aqueduct to solve the problem. It carried a heavy stream of fresh water from the distant hills. The stone channels sloped gently, using gravity to push the water forward. The cool stream flowed right into the high, sunny terraces. It spilled over the edges, watering the exotic plants and cooling the hot stone. The sound of rushing water echoed through the quiet palace courtyards. It was a massive, hidden machine, designed just to keep a few beautiful leaves green in the desert. Deep inside another palace in the same city, a different kind of treasure was kept. The famous library of Ashurbanipal was not a single, echoing grand hall. It was a quiet, meticulous collection spread across many small, dark rooms. The king wanted to gather all the knowledge of the world. His scribes collected thousands of heavy clay tablets covered in tiny, wedge-shaped writing. They did not just pile them on the floor. The rooms were lined with sturdy wooden shelves. The fragile clay tablets were carefully sorted and placed into large clay jars. These jars protected the dry earth from dampness and dust. The rooms smelled of old wood, dry clay and quiet oil lamps. Scribes walked softly between the jars, looking for specific stories or star charts. It was a vast, silent filing system. The entire memory of a civilization was neatly packed into simple dirt pots. The greatest display of power was found in the sprawling city of Babylon. The mighty Euphrates River flowed directly through the center of the dense metropolis. A wild river is dangerous, prone to sudden, violent seasonal floods. The city engineers refused to let the water dictate their lives. They built massive, straight embankments out of hard-baked red brick. These high walls lined both sides of the wide, rushing river. They locked the water into a strict, predictable path. The heavy bricks absorbed the constant push of the current. They protected the fragile mudbrick homes from the rising spring tides. The river became a tame working highway right in the middle of the streets. Boats glided quietly past the high red walls, carrying grain and stone. The city had essentially put a collar on the wild water. The river was forced to obey the straight, sharp lines of the architects. The river divided the city, but the rulers found a secret way across. They did not just build bridges over the rushing water. They constructed a dark, brick-lined tunnel directly beneath the riverbed. It was an astonishing piece of hidden engineering. The damp, vaulted passage connected the royal palace to the main temple complex. It allowed the royal family to cross the city completely unseen. The floor was always slightly wet, and the air was heavy and cool. The thick brick ceiling held back the crushing weight of the river above. You could probably hear the muffled rush of the water through the stones. Servants lit the long curved path with small flickering oil lamps. It was a quiet, private journey through the dark earth. While the busy city crossed the bright bridges above, the king walked silently below. He moved like a ghost beneath the muddy water. The outer defenses of this great capital were just as excessive. The city was surrounded by walls of truly unbelievable thickness. The engineers did not just want to stop enemy armies. They wanted to project an image of absolute, unshakable permanence. The main defensive ramparts were built incredibly wide and flat on top. They were paved with heavy stone, creating a high, elevated road. The walls were so thick that a 4-horse chariot could easily drive along them. A driver could even turn the entire team around without falling off the edge. Guards paced along this massive brick highway, looking out over the flat plains. The sheer volume of mud and baked brick required to build this is staggering. The wall was essentially a long, artificial mountain wrapped around the city. It made the people inside feel perfectly safe. The heavy, quiet mass of the brick simply absorbed all fear. Inside those massive walls stood the most famous tower in history. The great ziggurat, known as the Etemenanki, dominated the flat skyline. It was a colossal square mountain, made entirely of baked brick. The structure rose 300 feet into the bright hot sky. It was built in 7 distinct, shrinking terraces, like a massive staircase to the clouds. This towering monument is widely believed to be the inspiration for the Tower of Babel. It cast a long, sharp shadow across the busy streets below. The sheer scale of it made human beings look like tiny ants. Priests climbed the long, steep stairs to reach the quiet shrine at the very top. Up there, the noise of the city faded into a soft hum. The wind blew constantly against the high brick walls. It was a bold, heavy attempt to bridge the gap between the dirt and the gods. At the base of the great tower ran the most important street in the empire. The processional way was a wide, flat avenue designed for grand parades. It was paved with massive, smooth slabs of limestone and red breccia stone. The colors formed a striking, elegant path between high, defensive brick walls. But the true secret of this street was hidden completely out of sight. King Nebuchadnezzar wanted his legacy to last forever. He ordered his workers to carve his name and titles into the stones. But they did not carve them on the top where people walked. Every single heavy slab was secretly inscribed underneath, facing the dark dirt. The king knew that visible words would eventually wear away under thousands of feet. By hiding his name in the earth, he ensured it would survive. The street kept its quiet secret, holding the king's memory safely in the dark. This grand street led directly to the famous Ishtar Gate. But the gate we know today is only the top layer of a much older story. As the centuries passed, the city constantly rebuilt itself. The street level was repeatedly raised with fresh dirt and new paving stones. The original lower sections of the gate were slowly swallowed by the earth. Deep underground, directly beneath the visible walls, sit older versions of the exact same structure. These buried walls are covered in plain, unglazed mudbrick animal reliefs. They feature the same marching bulls and dragons, perfectly preserved in the dark. The builders simply used the old, beautiful art as a foundation for the new. The earth packed tightly around the carved mud, keeping the shapes sharp and clear. It is a quiet, hidden museum of older times. The city literally stood on the shoulders of its own forgotten art. The final, visible version of the gate was designed to be unforgettable. The architects covered the massive brick walls in brilliant, shining blue glaze. In a landscape of brown dust and red mud, the color was shocking. It looked like a piece of the deep sky had been pulled down to earth. The artisans achieved this striking hue through careful chemistry. They mixed precise amounts of copper and cobalt oxides into the liquid glaze. They painted the bricks and fired them in incredibly hot kilns. The heat melted the minerals into a smooth, glassy, vibrant surface. The bright blue caught the harsh sunlight and reflected it back. The marching animals on the walls seemed to glow with a quiet, fierce energy. It was a masterpiece of fire, dirt and metal. The gate stood as a bright, beautiful promise at the edge of the dusty world. High above the sleeping city of the night sky holds a quiet power. Priests stand on the flat brick roof of the great ziggurat. They look up into the deep dark. They are waiting for a very specific sign. The lunar calendar rules every part of life here. But a new month cannot begin on a simple guess. It only starts when someone spots the very first sliver of the crescent moon. The priests watch the horizon with practiced eyes. The air is cool and still. You can almost feel the weight of the stars pressing down. When that faint curve of pale light finally appears, the waiting ends. A new cycle begins for the city below. The moon dictates the festivals, the debts and the harvests. It is a slow, patient way to track time. The people trust the sky to tell them when to move forward. Down in the streets of Babylon, the dark hours have their own steady rhythm. Night watchmen patrol the massive brick walls that wrap around the city. They walk alone through the quiet shadows. The glow of the moon lights their path along the high ramparts. They carry spears, but their main job is simply to keep time. The long night is divided into 3 distinct shifts. They call these periods the 3 watches. At the start of each watch, a guard calls out into the dark. His voice echoes over the flat roofs of the sleeping houses. It is a comforting sound for anyone lying awake. It means the walls are secure, and the city is safe. The guards listen to the wind and watch the empty horizon. They pace back and forth until the sky begins to turn gray. The final watch ends just as the sun rises. When morning breaks over Nippur, the tablet house comes alive with quiet focus. This is the Edubir, the ancient school, where young boys learn to be scribes. They sit cross-legged on woven reed mats in a sunlit courtyard. The air smells of damp earth and fresh water. Each student holds a wooden stylus and a lump of wet clay. They do not write stories or letters yet. Instead, they spend years copying endless lists. They press wedge shapes into the soft clay to name trees, stones, and animals. It is slow, repetitive work. The teachers watch closely, demanding perfect strokes. A student must master these basic signs before he can write a real sentence. You can hear the soft scrape of wood on clay. It is the sound of a culture preserving its memory. These boys will grow up to record the laws and legends of their world. Far from the serious tablet houses, younger children find their own ways to pass the time. The narrow dirt alleyways become their playgrounds. They play in the dust with small toys made of baked clay. These simple objects look surprisingly like the toys children use today. There are miniature chariots with solid wheels that actually turn. There are tiny animal figures shaped like dogs and sheep. Some children spin clay tops on the hard-packed earth. The toys are rough and sturdy, made to survive rough play. A local potter likely shaped them from leftover scraps of mud. You can imagine the sounds of laughter bouncing off the high brick walls. The sun beats down on the streets, baking the ground hard. The children race their little chariots through the shadows. It is a timeless scene of ordinary joy. Even in a grand ancient city, kids just want to play. In the bustling markets of Uruk, adults handle their daily business with careful precision. Every merchant and official carries a small, carved stone cylinder. They wear these cylinder seals on strings around their necks. The stone acts as a highly personal identification badge. When 2 people agree to a contract, they do not sign their names with a pen. Instead, they take their stone and roll it firmly across a tablet of wet clay. The carved surface leaves a continuous repeating picture in the mud. You might see a tiny scene of a hero fighting a lion. Or you might see a quiet image of a farmer feeding his sheep. Each design is unique to its owner. The raised clay hardens into a permanent legal signature. It is a beautiful blend of art and bureaucracy. The little stone cylinders hold the weight of a person's entire reputation. Trade routes stretch far beyond the city gates, reaching distant towns like Kanesh. Merchants travel for weeks across rough terrain to sell their goods. They rely on a very clever system of credit to keep their business safe. A trader writes the details of a debt on a small clay tablet. But a simple tablet could be altered by a dishonest partner. So the merchant wraps the finished contract in a second, thinner layer of wet clay. This creates a secure clay envelope around the original document. They roll their personal seal across the outside layer. If a dispute arises later, a judge simply breaks the outer shell. The inner tablet reveals the true, untouched numbers. It is a brilliant solution to an ancient problem of trust. The system allows wealth to flow smoothly across hundreds of miles. The clay keeps their promises safe from the elements and from thieves. Back in the heart of Girsu, the local economy runs on a massive scale. The great temples are not just places of worship. They are also sprawling factories. Thousands of women work in the temple weaving workshops. They spend their days in large, sunlit rooms, filled with wooden looms. The air is thick with the smell of raw wool and lanolin. The women work in a steady, rhythmic silence. Their hands move quickly, turning rough fleece into incredibly fine garments. This cloth is the true wealth of the region. The city exports these woolen goods to distant lands, in exchange for copper and timber. The weavers are paid in daily rations of barley and oil. It is hard, endless labor, but it drives the entire empire. The soft clatter of the wooden looms forms the heartbeat of the city. Every thread they pull helps build the massive stone temples. In the city of Sippar, a different group of women holds a unique kind of power. They are known as the Naditu. These women live together in a cloistered compound, right next to the main temple. They are strictly forbidden from marrying or having children. But this restriction gives them a rare kind of freedom. Without families to manage, they focus entirely on commerce. Many of these women become wealthy, independent business owners. They buy land, rent out properties, and act as local moneylenders. People come to the temple gates to borrow silver from them. The Naditu keep careful records of every loan on neat clay tablets. They command deep respect in the community. Their quiet courtyard is a hub of serious financial power. They move through the shaded walkways with confidence and purpose. In a world ruled by kings, these women quietly build their own fortunes. Just down the street from the temple, the local tavern offers a warmer kind of gathering place. Women almost always run these lively social hubs. The tavern keeper stands behind a low mud-brick counter, pouring drinks for tired workers. The room smells of roasted grain and damp earth. People come here to relax, share news, and escape the midday heat. The tavern keeper knows everyone by name. She also knows exactly who owes her money. She extends credit to her regular customers throughout the year. She quietly tallies up their bar tabs on a piece of clay. Her customers rarely pay with silver. Instead, they settle their debts in bulk when the harvest comes in. They bring her heavy baskets of fresh barley to clear their names. It is a system built entirely on local trust. The tavern is the true living room of the ancient neighborhood. The drink of choice in these taverns is nothing like modern ale. Beer is a thick, cloudy, and highly nutritious daily staple. It is brewed quickly and served while the grain husks are still floating on the surface. If you try to drink it from a normal cup, you will get a mouthful of chaff. So the locals gather around large, round clay vats resting on the floor. They drink the beer communally, using long, hollow reed straws. The straws reach down past the floating debris to the clear liquid below. Several people might share the same vat, leaning in together. It is a deeply social way to end the day. The beer provides essential calories and safe hydration. Even the gods receive daily offerings of this thick brew. The sweet, yeasty smell of fermenting grain drifts through the narrow streets. It is the defining scent of the city. Out in the fields of Lagash, the source of all this grain requires careful respect. The harvest is a time of intense, back-breaking work. Farmers swing curved sickles from dawn until dusk to cut the tall wheat. But they do not take every last stalk from the earth. At the edge of the field, they deliberately leave a small patch of grain untouched. This is not an accident or a sign of laziness. It is a quiet, humble offering to the deities of the earth. It is also a practical gift for the field mice. The farmers believe that sharing the land's wealth keeps the natural world in balance. They leave the golden stalks standing in the twilight. The wind rustles through the remaining wheat as the workers head home. It is a small gesture of gratitude. They know the soil owes them nothing, so they say thank you. The natural world is not always so gentle or forgiving. The Euphrates River brings life to the crops, but it also serves as a terrifying judge. When a serious crime occurs and no witnesses can be found, the law turns to the water. This tense legal ritual is known as the river ordeal. A crowd gathers quietly on the muddy banks, under a grey sky. The accused person is brought forward and thrown directly into the fast-flowing current. The rules of the trial are brutally simple. If the person sinks and drowns, the river god has declared them guilty. If they manage to fight the current and survive, they are judged innocent. The community watches the churning water in absolute silence. They believe the river possesses a divine, flawless wisdom. It is a harsh way to find the truth. The dark water holds the final word on human justice. When sickness strikes a family in Nineveh, healing requires both medicine and magic. Doctors do not believe that illnesses happen by chance. They believe a specific, invisible demon has invaded the patient's body. To cure the sick person, the doctor must physically drive the spirit out. The healer grinds strong-smelling green herbs in a stone bowl. They mix these plants into a thick poultice and apply it to the skin. But the herbs alone are never enough. The doctor leans in close and whispers quiet, ancient incantations. They speak directly to the demon, ordering it to leave the house. Sometimes they place a small clay amulet near the bed for extra protection. The room smells of sharp mint and burning oil. The patient rests in the dim light, trusting the words as much as the medicine. It is a deeply personal battle against the unseen forces of the world. Life moves forward through formal agreements, and marriage is the most important contract of all. A wedding here is not a loud, romantic festival. It is a strict business arrangement between two families. The fathers negotiate the terms and press their seals into a clay tablet. The actual ceremony is remarkably quiet and brief. The bride sits in a shaded mudbrick room, wearing her best linen dress. The groom steps forward holding a small clay flask. He gently pours scented perfume over the bride's dark hair. The rich smell of cedar and myrrh fills the small space. This simple, fragrant act officially seals the legal agreement. There are no grand vows or loud public celebrations. The oil simply marks her as his wife in the eyes of the law. The families share a quiet meal to honor the new bond. Then, the couple begins their practical life together. Family bonds do not end when a person passes away. The dead remain a vital part of the household. When a family member dies, they are not carried out to a distant cemetery. Instead, they are buried directly under the packed dirt floors of the family home. The living walk over their ancestors every single day. This keeps the spirits close and involved in daily life. The family installs a small clay pipe that protrudes from the floor above the grave. Through this pipe they pour regular offerings of fresh water and warm broth. They believe the dead still need to eat and drink in the afterlife. It is a quiet, comforting chore performed by the head of the house. The ancestors protect the home from beneath the earth. In return, the living ensure they are never forgotten or left to go hungry. The initial shock of death, however, demands a very loud and public display. When a prominent citizen passes away, the grief spills out into the streets. Mourning is a deeply physical ritual. Family members do not hide their tears behind closed doors. They tear their fine linen garments and put on rough, scratchy sackcloth. They walk to the nearest dusty intersection and throw themselves on the ground. They literally roll in the dirt to show the depth of their sorrow. Their faces and hair become coated in pale gray dust. Neighbors stop and watch respectfully as the family wails. The raw emotion is meant to be seen by the whole community. It is a way to prove that the lost person was truly loved. Once the public mourning period ends, they wash the dust away. They return to their homes, leaving the torn clothes behind in the dirt. Sometimes, it is the gods themselves who need to be comforted. When a terrible storm or a sudden plague hits Eridu, the people assume the gods are angry. To soothe this divine rage, the temple calls upon a special class of lamentation priests. These men are known as the Gala. They gather in the shadowy doorways of the main sanctuary. They hold small, tight drums and begin to sing mournful, rhythmic hymns. They do not use the everyday language of the streets. Instead, they sing in a highly specialized ancient dialect, meant only for the gods. The sound is haunting and deeply calming. The low beat of the drums echoes through the rain. The priests sway slightly as they chant their apologies to the sky. They act as a pressure valve for the city's collective fear. Their sad songs slowly coax the angry deities back to a peaceful state. To avoid angering the gods in the first place, leaders constantly seek clues about the future. In the city of Mari, highly trained diviners look for these answers in blood. When a king needs to make a major decision, the priests sacrifice a flawless sheep. They carefully remove the animal's liver and place it on a stone altar. They believe the gods write their intentions directly onto this organ. The diviner studies the liver as if it were a complex map. They examine every lobe, vein and blemish, with intense focus. They compare the shape to clay models, covered in ancient cuneiform text. A swollen vein might mean a military victory. A dark spot could warn of an approaching famine. The priest reads the organic landscape in the flickering torchlight. It is a quiet, bloody science. The fate of the entire city rests on how they interpret the signs. The most terrifying omens of all appear high above the city. A sudden lunar eclipse strikes deep fear into the royal court. The unexpected darkness means the gods are plotting to kill the king. To protect the true ruler, the palace executes a bizarre and secretive plan. The real king quietly steps down and hides in his private rooms. a commoner is chosen to act as a temporary substitute king. This ordinary man is dressed in fine royal robes and seated on the ornate wooden throne. He lives in the palace for weeks, eating rich food and wearing the crown. The goal is to trick the angry gods into targeting him instead. He absorbs all the bad luck meant for the real monarch. When the dangerous period finally passes, the substitute is quietly executed. The true king reclaims his throne, safe from the wrath of the heavens. The king must also prove his strength against earthly dangers. In Nimrud, the ruler demonstrates his power through a highly choreographed lion hunt. This is not a wild chase through the open plains. It is a carefully staged ritual designed to show the king's divine right to rule. Guards capture fierce lions and release them into a closed arena. The king rides forward in a heavy wooden chariot. He stands tall, holding a bronze spear or a drawn bow. He strikes the animals down while his subjects watch in awe. The lion represents the chaotic, untamed forces of wild nature. By killing the beast, the king proves he can protect the civilized walled cities. It is a bloody piece of political theater. The dust settles around the chariot wheels as the ritual ends. The king stands victorious, a living shield between his people and the dangerous world outside. A true king builds as fiercely as he fights. When it is time to construct a new temple, the ruler must show absolute humility. The dedication of a sacred building begins with a quiet, physical act of devotion. The king does not just point a finger and order the workers to start. He must personally mold the very first mudbrick. He mixes the wet earth and straw with his own hands. He packs the heavy mud into a wooden frame. Then, he lifts the woven reed basket of dirt onto his own head. He carries it to the stone foundation, like a common laborer. It is a powerful image for the people to witness. The most powerful man in the city bows to the gods of the earth. The wet mud dries slowly in the early morning sun. This single brick anchors the massive sanctuary that will follow. Building the temple is only the first step. The priests must also create a physical body for the god to inhabit. Craftsmen carve beautiful statues from rare wood and cover them in gold leaf. But these objects are just art, until a secret ritual brings them to life. This ceremony is called the washing of the mouth. It takes place in a dark, incense-filled workshop deep inside the temple. Priests use silver bowls of pure water and fine linen cloths. They symbolically wash the statue's mouth, eyes, and ears. They chant spells to sever the statue's connection to the human craftsman who made it. In their minds, the wood and gold magically transform into living, breathing flesh. The statue is no longer a mere representation of the god. It is the god itself. The priests bow deeply to the glowing figure, ready to serve its every need. Once the god is alive, it requires constant, literal care. The priests treat the wooden cult statues like demanding royal guests. They do not just offer prayers or burn incense. They serve the statues real, elaborate meals twice every single day. The temple kitchens bake fresh bread, roast prime cuts of meat, and gather sweet fruits. Priests carry these heavy wooden tables of food into the dark inner sanctuary. They set the feast before the silent, staring figure. Then, they pull a linen curtain closed, so the god can eat in private. The priests wait quietly outside the door. After a set amount of time, they return and remove the food. The god has consumed the spiritual essence of the meal. The physical leftovers are then sent to the king's table. It is a daily rhythm of service that keeps the universe running smoothly. The most important moment in the temple's year arrives with the spring. The New Year festival brings a deep, solemn energy to the great Esagila sanctuary. The halls of the Temple of Marduk stand grand and empty. A high priest steps forward to perform a crucial, rhythmic recitation. He reads aloud from the Enuma Elish, the ancient epic of creation. His voice echoes off the high stone walls, telling the story of how the world began. He recounts how the storm god defeated the monster of chaos to build the sky and the earth. The reading is not just a reminder of the past. It is a magical act meant to renew the world for another year. The words hang in the air, caught in the shafts of sunlight. The city listens in respectful silence. They believe this story literally holds the fabric of the universe together. This reading is just one part of the massive Akitu festival. The celebration lasts for 12 days, filling the streets with music and processions. But the climax of the festival is a surprisingly quiet and tense ritual. The king enters the dim inner sanctuary completely alone. He leaves his heavy crown and weapons at the door. The high priest approaches him and does something unthinkable. He slaps the king hard across the face and pulls his ears. The king is forced to kneel on the cold stone floor. He must swear that he has not neglected the city or its temples. The slap must be hard enough to make the king cry. Those tears prove that he remains humble before the gods. Once the tears fall, the priest hands the crown back. The king's power is fully restored, and the city can safely begin its new year. Time moves in a very specific way. We measure our days in neat, even slices. 60 seconds make a minute. 60 minutes make an hour. A circle holds 360 degrees. We rarely stop to ask why. The answer lies buried in the deep past of Uruk. The ancient Sumerians built their world on a base 60 number system. They counted with a rhythm that still shapes our lives today. It was a highly flexible way to divide things. You can split 60 by many whole numbers. It made trade and astronomy much easier. The clay tablets they left behind are filled with these wedge-shaped marks. They tracked the stars and the seasons with them. When you look at a clock, you are reading Sumerian math. Their ancient logic still ticks away on your wrist. The empire is long gone, but its numbers never stopped counting. The night sky over Babylon was a giant canvas. The people here did not just look at the stars. They organized them. They mapped the heavens with incredible care. This is where the 12-sign zodiac was born. They watched the planets move across the dark expanse. They grouped the brightest stars into familiar shapes. Many of the constellations they named are the exact same ones we know. They saw a great bull in the sky and called it Taurus. They traced the curved tail of Scorpius the scorpion. These ancient names traveled across centuries and cultures. They passed from clay tablets to Greek scrolls to modern star charts. When you look up on a clear night, you share their view. You are tracing the same lines they drew thousands of years ago. The Babylonian sky is still hanging right above us. The city of Lhasa held its own quiet brilliance. A small clay tablet found here changed how we view math. It is known today as Plimpton 322. The surface is covered in neat, precise columns of numbers. For a long time, scholars did not know what it meant. Then they realized it was a list of special triangles. The Babylonians understood the Pythagorean theorem perfectly. They knew how the sides of a right triangle related to each other. They used this knowledge to build their massive temples and walls. The strange part is the date. This tablet was written a full 1,000 years before the Greek philosopher Pythagoras was even born. The math was already old by the time he claimed it. The scribes of Lhasa were quietly solving complex geometry in the desert sun. They just never bothered to name it after themselves. People have always wanted to know where they stand in the world. In the city of Sippar, someone tried to draw the whole Earth. The result is a cracked clay tablet known as the Imago Mundi. It is the oldest surviving map of the world. The map shows a flat, round Earth. Babylon sits proudly, right in the center. A few neighboring cities and regions are marked nearby. Around the edges flows a great, circular body of water. They called it the Bitter River. Beyond that river lay unknown, mythical lands. The map is not meant to be a perfect guide for travelers. It is a way of organizing the universe. It shows how the Neo-Babylonians saw their place in the cosmos. They were the center of everything that mattered. the rest of the world simply faded away into the deep, bitter waters. The Assyrian king Ashurbanipal ruled from the great city of Nineveh. He was a fierce warrior, but he was also a scholar. He built a massive library filled with thousands of clay texts. He was incredibly proud of his ability to read and write. Most kings relied entirely on scribes for this work. Ashurbanipal wanted everyone to know he was different. He often added a personal note to the end of his tablets. This note was a boast about his deep knowledge. He claimed he could read the hidden stones from before the flood. He loved to solve complex mathematical problems. He enjoyed debating with his wisest advisors. He saw his literacy as a true mark of power. The king could conquer cities with his armies. But he conquered time itself by reading the ancient, silent words pressed into clay. The urge to leave a personal mark is very old. In the city of a high priestess named Enheduanna did something entirely new. She wrote a series of beautiful, complex temple hymns. Then, she proudly signed her own name to them. She is the earliest known author in all of human history. Before her, texts were mostly anonymous records or royal decrees. Enhedu brought a personal voice to the written word. She wrote about her devotion, her struggles, and her life. She served during the Akkadian Empire, managing a powerful temple complex. Her poetry was so beloved that it was copied for centuries. Scribes studied her words long after she was gone. She stepped out from the shadows of history and claimed her work. She proved that a single voice could echo across thousands of years. Her name still lives in the clay. Learning to write cuneiform was a long and tedious process. In the city of Nippur, young students spent hours pressing reeds into wet clay. They had to memorize hundreds of complex wedge shapes. It was exhausting work for a child. Sometimes, their attention simply drifted away. We know this because their practice tablets still exist. If you look closely at the margins, you can find ancient doodles. Bored student scribes would stop practicing their wedges and start drawing. They scratched crude pictures of animals into the soft clay. They drew funny faces and random shapes. These little sketches were never meant to be saved. They were just the daydreams of kids sitting in a hot classroom. The teachers probably scolded them for ruining the clay. But those tiny, rebellious drawings survived. They remind us that human nature has not changed at all. The classrooms of Nippur were not always peaceful places. One surviving tablet tells the story of a very frustrated teacher. He recorded a terrible day he had with a single unruly student. The teacher wrote down every offense the boy committed. The student was beaten multiple times in one afternoon. He was punished for having poor handwriting on his clay tablet. He was struck again for speaking out loud without permission. Later, he was beaten for leaving the school gate without asking. The text reads like a tired diary entry. The teacher was clearly at his wits' end with the boy. Education in the ancient world was strict and unforgiving. The scribal arts required absolute discipline and focus. This small tablet captures a very human clash of wills. You can almost hear the sharp crack of the stick and the heavy sighs in the room. Writing was not just for poetry and school lessons. It was also perfect for lodging a bitter complaint. A man named Nani used a clay tablet to express his deep anger. He sent it to a merchant named Nasser around 1750 BC. This is the oldest known customer service complaint in the world. Nani was furious about a recent shipment of copper ingots. He claimed the copper was of terrible quality. He also complained that his servant had been treated rudely. Nani demanded his money back and refused to accept the bad metal. The tablet is full of pure, timeless frustration. Nasser apparently kept this angry letter in his house. Archaeologists found it there thousands of years later. It seems Nasser had a habit of keeping his bad reviews. The anger in the clay still feels incredibly fresh and familiar today. Royal life had its own petty frustrations. In the city of Mari, a young princess felt she was being treated unfairly. She sat down and dictated a very angry letter to her father, the king. She complained bitterly about her royal clothing allowance. She noticed that the other women in the palace were getting better garments. Her own wardrobe felt cheap and inadequate by comparison. She demanded to know why she was being ignored. The letter is sharp, dramatic, and full of teenage grievance. She wanted the finest wool and the brightest colors. She wanted to look like the true princess she was. The heavy affairs of state did not matter to her in that moment. She just wanted better clothes. This small piece of clay proves that family drama is truly timeless. Even in a grand palace, someone always feels left out. The law can always be bent if you know how. In the city of Nuzi, strict rules govern the sale of land. Family property was supposed to stay within the family. You could not simply sell your inherited fields to a stranger. But wealthy buyers found a clever legal loophole. They convinced the landowners to legally adopt them as their children. Once the wealthy adult was adopted, they became a family member. The land could then be passed down to them as an inheritance. In return, the new child would give their adopted parent a handsome gift of silver. It was a real estate sale, disguised as a family reunion. The courts accepted these strange adoptions without question. Dozens of tablets record these fake family ties. It was a quiet, polite way to break the rules. The paperwork was always perfectly in order. The justice system could also be incredibly harsh. A famous tablet records a grim murder trial from 1850 BC. 3 men ambushed and killed a high-ranking temple official. The crime shocked the community, and the men were quickly caught. But the trial took a very dark turn. The victim had a wife, and she was brought before the judges too. She had not taken part in the murder at all. However, the court learned that she knew about the plot beforehand. She had stayed silent and done nothing to warn her husband. The judges debated her guilt for a long time. In the end, they decided her silence was a crime. She was charged alongside the 3 killers. The tablet lays out the verdict in cold, precise wedges. It is a chilling reminder of how the law viewed duty and betrayal. The laws of Babylon left no room for error. King Hammurabi carved his famous legal code into a massive stone pillar. The rules for construction workers were incredibly strict. A builder had to guarantee the safety of his work with his life. If a man built a house and it later collapsed, there was an investigation. If the falling roof killed the homeowner, the punishment was absolute. The builder himself would be put to death. There were no fines or second chances for fatal mistakes. This law forced every carpenter and bricklayer to work with extreme care. They checked every wooden beam and every mud-brick wall twice. The stakes were simply too high to rush the job. You can imagine the anxiety of finishing a new home. Every creaking floorboard must have sounded like a death sentence to the man who built it. Hammurabi also kept a very close eye on the local taverns. Beer was a vital part of daily life in the ancient world. It was much safer to drink than water and rich in calories. The king wanted to make sure no one was being cheated. His code strictly regulated the price and quality of tavern beer. Most tavern keepers were women, and the law spoke directly to them. If a woman watered down her beer to make an extra profit, she faced absolute ruin. The punishment for cheating her thirsty customers was incredibly severe. She was to be thrown directly into the river. It was a brutal way to enforce consumer protection. The threat hung over every clay jug poured in the city. A good tavern keeper made sure her brew was thick and strong. A bad one risked a very sudden, watery end to her business. Taverns were also places for stories and laughter. One Babylonian tablet contains what might be the world's oldest known joke. It is a short riddle about a stray dog. The dog walks into a local tavern and looks around. He squints into the dim light, and complains that he cannot see anything. He says he will just have to open this one. the punchline has been lost in translation over the centuries. Scholars still debate what the joke actually means. It might be a pun on the words for eyes and doors. It might be a political insult that we no longer understand. But the setup is incredibly familiar. A dog walks into a bar. It is the ancient ancestor of 1,000 modern jokes. Even if we do not get the punchline, the rhythm of the humor is still there. Dogs were a common sight in these ancient streets. In Ur, they even shaped the local geography. There was a specific street corner where stray dogs always gathered. They slept in the shade of the high mud-brick walls. They waited for scraps from the nearby houses. This pack of dogs became a permanent fixture of the neighborhood. The corner was so well known that it became an official landmark. People actually used it when giving directions. A surviving tablet mentions the dog corner as a way to find a specific house. You would walk past the temple, turn left, and look for the sleeping dogs. It is a charming, deeply human detail. The grand monuments of the city have crumbled into dust. But we still know exactly where the local strays like to take their afternoon naps. Dogs also served a more mystical purpose in the home. The people of Babylon worried constantly about evil spirits. They believed that ghosts and demons could slip through open doors. To keep their homes safe, they relied on spiritual guard dogs. They crafted small, crude clay figurines of dogs. They would bury these little statues under the dirt thresholds of their doorways. The idea was that the spirit of the dog would wake up and bark. It would frighten away any unseen dangers trying to enter the house. Many of these figurines have been found with their names scratched into the clay. They had names like Loud Bark and Biter of Enemies. It was a quiet, comforting ritual. You could sleep a little better, knowing a loyal clay dog was watching the front door. They stood guard in the dark for centuries. Getting a child to sleep was just as stressful then as it is now. The world's oldest known lullaby was written in cuneiform. It was meant to soothe a crying baby in the middle of the night. But the lyrics are surprisingly dark and threatening. The mother sings to the child, warning them to be quiet. She tells the baby that the demon of the house is sleeping nearby. If the baby keeps crying, the demon will wake up and eat them. It is a very intense way to encourage a nap. The ancient world was full of unseen threats and fears. Even a simple lullaby carried the weight of those daily anxieties. The mother was probably just exhausted and desperate for some peace. She used the scariest story she knew to buy a few hours of quiet in the dark. Medical treatments were also deeply tied to magic and myth. A terrible toothache was a common problem in the ancient world. Without modern dentistry, the pain could be unbearable. The doctors of Nineveh had a very specific theory about the cause. They believed a mythical toothworm was to blame. They thought this tiny demon crawled into the mouth to eat the gums and drink the blood. To cure the pain, the doctor had to perform a ritual. They recited a long, dramatic incantation to banish the worm. They cursed the creature and ordered it to leave the patient alone. They would often apply a mixture of herbs and oil to the tooth afterward. The medicine might have numbed the pain a little, but the real cure was the power of the words. They fought the invisible worm with poetry and prayer. The natural world was constantly sending messages to those who knew how to look. The Neo-Babylonians watched the behavior of animals very closely. They believed the gods used them to send warnings about the future. They kept massive lists of omens and their meanings. One specific text warned about the behavior of city pigs. It stated that if a pig was seen carrying green reeds in its mouth, danger was near. This strange sight meant a devastating flood was coming to the city. It seems like a random, bizarre connection. But pigs are sensitive to changes in weather and moisture. Perhaps they gathered reeds to build higher nests before heavy rains. The priests turned this natural instinct into a divine warning. A simple pig walking down a muddy street could strike fear into the heart of a king. Water was the lifeblood of the empire, and it had to be managed. The rivers and canals brought trade, food and wealth to the cities. But they also brought endless amounts of thick, heavy mud. The waterways constantly choked on reeds and silt. King Hammurabi had to issue a royal decree to fix a major problem. He explicitly ordered the clearing of a specific vital canal. The water flow had become too weak and shallow. Heavy cargo boats were getting stuck in the mud. The king commanded his workers to dredge the channel immediately. It was a massive, exhausting job. Men had to dig out the wet clay by hand under the hot sun. The decree shows how fragile the city's infrastructure really was. Even a great king had to fight a daily war against the slow, creeping mud of the river. Land and water were so valuable that cities fought endless wars over them. The city of Lagash and the city of Ummah shared a border. Between them lay a single, highly fertile strip of farmland. It was known as the Guadin, the edge of the plain. Both cities claimed this green, watered field as their own. This disagreement sparked a petty, bitter border war. The conflict dragged on for an incredible 150 years. Generations of soldiers died over this one patch of barley. Kings raised stone monuments to mark their temporary victories. Then the other side would march in and smash them. It was a brutal, exhausting cycle of violence. The Guidin was a beautiful piece of land, rich and green. But it soaked up more blood than water during those long, angry decades of ancient warfare. When the fields were peaceful, they produced incredible food. A 4,000-year-old tablet at Yale reveals the rich diet of Lhasa. It is an ancient cookbook filled with complex recipes. The text contains instructions for 25 different kinds of stews. These were not simple, bland bowls of porridge. The recipes call for garlic, onions, leeks and rich meats. One standout dish is a highly complex lamb and beet broth. The instructions detail exactly how to simmer the meat and layer the flavors. It sounds exactly like a dish you would order in a modern restaurant. The tablet shows a deep, sophisticated love of cooking. The people here cared about how their food tasted. They wanted rich, savory meals at the end of a long day. The smell of roasting lamb and garlic has not changed in 4 millennia. Some objects from this world remain completely silent. The Standard of Ur is one of the most famous artifacts ever found. It is a hollow wooden box, beautifully decorated on all sides. The surface is covered in intricate mosaics of blue lapis lazuli and white shell. The pictures show scenes of war, chariots, and grand royal banquets. It is a masterpiece of ancient art. But to this day, no one actually knows what it was used for. Some think it was the soundbox of a musical instrument. Others believe it was carried on a pole during parades. It might have been a box for storing precious funds. The people who made it left no instructions behind. It sits in a museum now, bright and beautiful. It keeps its original purpose locked away behind those tiny, perfect pieces of blue stone. The gods themselves often keep their deepest secrets. The Burney relief is a large terracotta plaque from the Old Babylonian era. It depicts a mysterious, beautiful winged goddess. She has the sharp talons of a bird instead of normal human feet. She stands calmly on the backs of 2 fierce lions. Large owls flank her on either side. The plaque was originally painted a bright, striking red. Scholars have studied her for decades, but they still debate her true identity. Some believe she is Ishtar, the powerful goddess of love and war. Others think she is a dark demon of the night. She holds the rod and ring of divine justice in her hands. She stares straight ahead, offering no easy answers. The red paint has mostly faded away over the centuries. She remains a quiet, powerful mystery, watching over a world that has long since turned to dust. Our walk through ancient Mesopotamia is coming to an end. Wherever you've drifted to, you don't need to come back. There's nothing more to listen for tonight. Sleep well.